Good morning. Welcome to our service. I'm Thina Berry, and I have the honor of serving as your service coordinator today. I also get the joy of coordinating for my mother, Linda Berry, who will ask us to consider deeply what beloved community means to each of us. Today is also the last day of Black History Month, once a year when we remember, celebrate, and share the many contributions of Blacks to American history. It is fitting we'll be delving more deeply into beloved community, as it is a concept many of us learned from one of our treasured ancestors, Martin Luther King Jr. I invite you to open to this time together fully, as Sandy lights our chalice from our beloved building, and I share these opening words. These words are from Reverend Dr. David Breeden. May I be all in for beloved community. May I be all in, despite the challenges. May I be all here for beloved community. May I be ready for the beauty because I long for the possibilities. Yes, I am here for beloved community. May I see the beauty of you in community, of us in community. May we be the beauty of beloved community. May we be the dream together. We join here in beloved community. In all times, joyful and when there is sorrow, a congregation is a group of folks who've chosen to stay together. We are the ones coming to save us. Reverend Cynthia is ready to guide, support, and contact the necessary folks when there is need. You can reach out to her in the ways on the screen, most immediately on her cell phone at 859 221 3034. In our covenant we share together, we profess our intention to work to build a better world. I've spent some time thinking about what that means, imagining the weft and warp of the fabric of this new, better world, the sights, the smells, and the sounds of it. Today, my mom will be offering up what that beloved community could mean to each of us. Let us, if you are so moved, join in sharing our covenant one with another. Please join me in reading our covenant. We covenant together to make a welcoming community, to walk together in the way of truth and love, to seek the life of the Spirit as it is known by each person, to support each other in thought, word, and deed as we work to build a better world. Our first song today, please join in singing as you are so moved, is Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of living, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, whoever you're living, cause is your caravan, our despair, cause is the passion and power said, come, yet again come.
Our time for All Sages today, I want to introduce you to the concept of Ubuntu. Ubuntu runs through the veins of Africans and speaks, in essence, of the quality of being human. For Africans, it is embodied in the oft repeated proverb, a person is a person through other people. As expressed by Dr. John Mbiti, it means I am because we are. We are, therefore I am. It is, in essence, a person is a person through other people. According to Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who says, you might have much of the world's riches and might have a portion of authority, but if you have no Ubuntu, you do not amount to much. So while this African proverb reveals a worldview or metaphysics that we owe our selfhood to others, we're first and foremost social beings, that if you will, no man is an island. Or as the African might say, one finger cannot pick up a grain. Ubuntu is at the same time a deeply personal philosophy that calls us to mirror our humanity for each other. As seen by Stephen Covey, Ubuntu reflects one of his 7 habits of highly effective people. Interdependence is a higher value than independence. And Ubuntu, as expressed by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and his assertion that all life is interrelated. One of his fundamental beliefs was in the kinship of all persons. He believed that all of life is part of a single process. All living things are interrelated, and all persons are sisters and brothers. And as he said, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And so with that, I'd like for you to reflect a little bit on Ubuntu. I am a person through other people. My humanity is tied to yours. Our Share the Plate partner is Tennessee Justice Center. Reading their front page statement has echoes of our own 7 principles. Tennessee Justice Center believes that diversity, equity, and inclusion are intrinsically valuable and necessary to manifest our mission of justice for all. We recognize that racism is foundational to the social and economic disparities that plague our nation. We work to achieve opportunity, security, and dignity for all Tennesseans. We are committed to expanding and continue our advocacy, education, and litigation work as a means towards greater equity. You can donate to the Share the Plate by going to nashvilleuu.org and clicking donate. You can also use any of the other means on the screen before you, including texting Share the Plate to 615-246-5553. Please donate as you are able in any of the ways that you see here. If you'd like to mail a check, please don't mail directly to the church's address. Instead, email the church at gnuuc@gnuuc.org, and Chris will reply with the correct mailing address to send in your donation check. Thanks for doing what you can. In this time of the service, we will take some time to reflect and meditate. In just a minute, I'll provide a reflection for you. We'll share time in silence. Then you'll hear a musical interlude to consider. After the song, my mother, Linda Berry, will provide today's homily, Beloved Community. So now, I invite you to settle in, get comfortable, and consider the following. For today's meditation, we offer the words of the UU 8th principle. Beloved community happens when people of diverse racial, ethnic, educational, class, gender, sexual orientation, backgrounds, and identities come together in an interdependent relationship of love, mutual respect, and care that seeks to realize justice within the community and in the broader world.
When I hear your voice, I almost cry. And when you laugh, it makes me sigh. When I read your words, I wonder why we're together now, more than ever now.
And though distant you may seem to be, you really aren't so far from me. I can feel you here right where I am. If you close your eyes, maybe you can
Sing to me now, sing me a song, the one where the mountains and the sky come crumbling down, and still we stand side by side. When I see your face, oh how you shine, a precious light, a star divine.
how your beauty just reflects back mine. Hold out your heart like a lifeline.
Sing to me now, sing me a song, the one where the mountains and the sky come crumbling down, and still we stand side by side. I say to you now, I sing you a song, the one where the mountains and the sky come crumbling down, and still we stand side by side. Side by side.
Good morning, everybody. What a pleasure it is to be here with you. the beloved community, a term often incorrectly attributed to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. True, Dr. King popularized the term, but it was originally coined by the 19th century American objective idealist philosopher Josiah Royce. Royce believed that as persons become increasingly able to form loyalties, the practical and ongoing devotion to a cause bigger than themselves, and as those loyalties become unifiable in the higher purposes of groups of persons over many generations, humanity is increasingly better able to recognize that the highest ideal is the creation of a perfected, beloved community in which each and every person shares. Traditional American thinking interprets Royce's concept of the beloved community as a place where individual freedom and liberty is maximized for each individual with no responsibility for anybody else in the community or for a commons to benefit all. This interpretation has been justified by Calvinist thinking, which promotes the notion that rewards, such as wealth, are and should be bestowed upon the righteous in society. But for King, himself a devout Baptist minister, following the concepts of the beloved community was neither the more perfect union of the American founders nor the holy city to be experienced after our demise. Rather, the beloved community for King was something different, something wholly perfect. It was nothing less than the Christian concept of the kingdom of God here on earth. In short, it was a concept in which all human existence throughout history, from ancient Eastern and Western societies up through the present day, has strived toward community, toward coming together. To King, that movement is as inexorable, as irresistible as the flow of a river toward the sea. In the milieu of the 1960s civil rights movement, we came to understand that the beloved community was based on the principle of agape love. This involves the selfless, sacrificial, unconditional love for all people, not just people of one's own color or one's own group, but for all humankind. With such deeply and firmly held beliefs inculcated into the minds and hearts of many peoples and leaders in the mid-1960s, it was inevitable that a people who had been enslaved, disinherited, kept down, and willfully abused would rise up and demand it was time to build the beloved community right here and right now. Following the ideas of Gandhi, Royce, his mentors, including Jim Lawson, Howard Thurman, Benjamin Mays, and others, King believed and taught that traditional thinking nearly left the church off the hook by allowing it and its followers to escape the fullness of the beloved community by accepting the frailty and fallibility of humanity and preaching such notions as the meek inheriting the earth, loving one's neighbor as himself, feeding the hungry through special offerings, etc. Unfortunately, today, despite the major progress made during the 1960 civil rights movement, having had a president and a vice president elected to the highest offices of the United States in the 21st century, having seen the appointment of several underrepresented people to corporate boardrooms, etc., we still have a very long distance to go before we can say that we have opened the gates leading to the beloved community, let alone that we have entered the pathway to it. Many Americans were shocked by the civil unrest of 2020 following the murder of George Floyd at the hands of police officers. And many were surprised by the election and popularity of the most vile, racist leader of the United States in United States history. We have long held cultural lies about American history that have only recently been challenged and revealed. Almost all of these lies have reinforced white supremacy, which many Americans feel was a time when America was really great. One of the books that I was forced to read during my undergraduate studies in the 1960s was The Miseducation of the Negro. This was written by Carter G. Woodson, who was the founder of Black History Month. I would speculate that we as a nation have suffered terribly as a result of the miseducation of everyone. To begin with, the preamble of the Constitution begins with, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union," etc., etc., etc. First question to be addressed here is, who are the people referenced in "We, the people"? It certainly was not the slaves, either African or indentured Europeans, the indigenous people whose lands and culture were concomitantly being stolen, or women. Secondly, what were the so-called founding fathers thinking when they referred to this country as a democracy? America is not, nor has it ever been, a democracy. No, it was a slaveocracy, with the laws of the land written by and for the slave owners and the land robbers, North and South, and later the West. In fact, all but two of the first presidents before Abraham Lincoln, those were John Adams and his son John Quincy Adams, they were all slave owners. Clearly, the framers of the Constitution did not act out of a spirit of beloved community in which each and every one shares. In his letter from a Birmingham jail of 1963, King reminds us that injustice everywhere, anywhere, is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Such reasoning is consistent with the seventh UU principle, respect for the independent web of all existence of which we are a part. In other words, UUs strongly hold to the idea that all people are bound together through the actions of each individual. Three additional UU principles suggest the significance, importance of the beloved community, and those are the first, second, and sixth, as well as the eighth, which Thino shared with us a little bit ago. The first principle is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Second one is justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. And number six is the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. While UU principles are not dogmas demanded by our faith, they are important principles which provide the foundation of our covenant with each other and with the world. But you may ask, how, in this world, which is admittedly imperfect, can we go about achieving this goal of beloved community? Can it be done? And third, is it worth the effort? Let's start with the first question. In her 1989 book, A Feminist Ethic of Risk, Sharon Welch, formerly academic dean of Meadville Theological Seminary, was concerned about cultured despair. She described this as the tendency to become frustrated and give up trying when we run into stumbling blocks during our efforts to change society. This is most prevalent when we try to eradicate what she calls wicked problems, like racism or any of the other isms for that matter, poverty or injustice. She feels that cultured despair is the typical outcome when one joins a movement, sees that they are not able to bring forth the changes desired, so frustrated and disillusioned, they just give up. Welch uses several examples from Black women's literature to show people gathering renewed strength as they discern that they may not see their desired outcome, but that their real task was to carry the baton for just one or two legs of the race before passing it on to someone else to carry it forth to the next step, and so on until the goal is achieved. King foreshadowed such thinking in his final speech during the strike championing the garbage workers of Memphis as part of the Poor People's Campaign. After several threats and other hostile instances designed to disrupt this action, King gave his famous mountaintop speech, in which he talks about he may not get there, but he, in fact, has gotten to the mountaintop and looked over and believes firmly that all of his people will reach the promised land, and how he's not worried so much about longevity, but more about his achieving what God sent him here to do. King did not use the beloved community as a rallying cry. He embodied it. He did not fall into culture despair, even though he seems to have foreseen his own demise before seeing the desired outcomes. It was clear to him that he had carried the movement as far as he was able, and that the movement would go forward until the beloved community emerged. Some argue that King's efforts were fine 50 years ago, but that times have changed, so we need a new and different approach. This may be true to some extent in terms of different strategies, but the goal has not changed. Equal justice and agape love for everyone is still as valid a goal as it was then. Some say that to do this, we need reparations for African Americans who built this country through the sweat of their brows and the breaking of their backs. Others would expand the reparations to include the descendants of endangered peoples and, of course, indigenous peoples of this land, and at least to some extent, to women. But I would argue that reparations alone would merely pit one group against another over a different cause. Reparations without reconciliation would be worthless. In looking at the many positive outcomes that reconciliation has contributed to many cultures and countries all over the world, coupling reparations with reconciliation may, in fact, be a good place to begin. This, of course, would have to be accompanied by a kind of training conducted by the Highlander School and preparing people for social action leadership, not just teaching the words of beloved community. This is already done in many of our churches every Sunday, to some avail, but not to the extent that it needs to. But what we need to do is to do it as the Highlander School did, teaching ourselves and each other how to take this concept into both our minds and our hearts, and teaching our children and grandchildren to love their neighbors as themselves in a wholly committed manner, not tolerating actions or words that minimize the likelihood of anything less than a beloved community, and doing so without animosity, violence, or hatred. Can it be done? I believe so. Deep in my heart, I believe, like Dr. King, that I may not live to see it. After all, I have already been around for 8 decades in a group with a life expectancy of only 68 years. But I, too, have had a chance to go to the mountaintop and see the promised land. I am very happy, old lady, today, knowing that the beloved community will come, that the arc of the moral compass truly bends toward justice. And lastly, is it worth it? Suffice it to say, a resounding yes. For my great-grandchildren to live in a world emulating agape love through beloved community after my great-grandparents knew the lash of the whip is a true and honest comfort. 7 generations of progress to meet what should have been from the beginning is worth and worthy of all of our efforts. It confirms Royce's belief that as we become mature, we do in fact reach the point where we can embrace the concept of beloved community. That as persons become increasingly able to form loyalties, the practical and ongoing devotion to a cause bigger than themselves. And as those loyalties become unifiable into the great purposes of groups of persons over many generations, humanity is increasingly better able to accept a world that leads to a beloved community in which each and every person shares. Thanks to the millions who followed during this past year, which was riddled with problems, especially the pandemic, we have learned that failure to finally get to a beloved community is not an option. Thanks to the many millions who followed the life-saving protocols and who have and are receiving their inoculations to prevent the spread of the pandemic, we have avoided total annihilation of humankind. Yes, through the selfish and thoughtless ignoring of masking, social distancing, and other measures to minimize the effects of the pandemic, we've had more difficulty eradicating it, and it has taken longer for us to eradicate it. But thanks to those of us who do believe in not only protecting ourselves, but also protecting others, there is a future for humankind. To me, this is an example of beloved community, as well as how we can go about creating it. Let us go forth into the wider world and apply the lessons that we have learned through the years when rebuilding our own communities following many floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, pandemics, and other disasters. Let us apply it to everyday life. May we have the power and the wisdom to do so. May we open our hearts and our minds to seek the common good for all, not the common goods for ourselves. May we learn to live in beloved community and have justice for all. Blessed be and amen.
What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this that calls the Lord of bliss to send such perfect peace to my soul, to my soul, to send such perfect peace to my soul. To God and to the Lamb I will sing, I will sing. To God and to the Lamb I will sing. To God and to the Lamb, who is the great I am, and Christ the Son of Man, I will sing, I will sing.
Thank you, Mom. That was a beautiful homily. I really appreciate that. And as you were talking about the 7 generations um, from you, both backwards and forwards, it occurred to me that what you're talking about is my child's grandchildren. So your father's great grandfather to my daughter's great grandchild. That's a lot of generations to realize peace and justice and equity. And I love that you called us to taking an active role in it without despairing, understanding that we are only one leg of the race, one leg. And we should pass the baton, be prepared to pass the baton, just as Martin Luther King Jr. did. Again, thank you for that. Now is the time in our service when we have the opportunity to share with each other in community, share our joys and concerns. Thank you to those of you who have joined us on YouTube. We are going to go ahead and turn off that stream now